With me today is Zeus Eddie Campa. Eddie is the former Chief Deputy of the Law Enforcement Bureau at El Paso County Sheriff's Office, having spent more than 20 years serving the city of El Paso, Texas. Eddie is currently serving as the Executive Director for the state of Oklahoma's Council on Law Enforcement Education and Training. As the first Hispanic police chief of a Texas city that has an infamous history of racial division, Eddie is recognised nationally as a leader of bridging racial divides and inspiring cultural change. Welcome, Eddie, and thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Looking forward to a good conversation.
Me too. Now, look, I've only just scraped the surface of your illustrious career to date, and I'm looking forward to discussing it more with you today. So let's begin with how you got involved in law enforcement.
Sure, absolutely. My role model growing up, I was born to a single parent and raised by my grandmother. So I had an uncle who was in law enforcement, and I just kind of wanted to mirror him, and I just followed in his footsteps before I eventually realized that it was just a natural calling for me. I just like helping people and being a servant of the public.
So you're the creator of the No Colours, No Label initiative, which addresses the misconceptions that communities have that police are racially motivated. And you're considered a leading expert in the development and implementation of community policing programs such as the Cool Cops Ice Cream Truck, Sheriff's Town Bike Safety Program, Santa with a Badge, Sheriff's Haunted House, and El Paso County Anti-Bullying Coalition. So talk me through the racial issues that law enforcement face and how this has evolved over your years spent in law enforcement. Do you think it's getting better or worse?
Well, I think that the racial issue across the nation is just getting worse in all reality. Here in the United States, the last 4 years, without becoming political, just the last 4 years of the election process, racism reared its ugly head again. Racism has always been here, except, for many years we were able to just kind of hide it and put it away. In the last 4 years, just really brought it out and made it almost okay to be racist again, And as far as in law enforcement, I believe that 99% of all law enforcement officers were all good people. We got into this job to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. We love helping the community and all. And I really look at law enforcement. I used to think that in law enforcement, it wasn't really a racial issue, more of a social class issue, more like a classism issue about disparity as far as financial gain and things. But once I went to that community where I led an East Texas department, I quickly found out that I was a little bit wrong because racism was a real thing, and it was a real big culture shock, especially to be exposed to something like that as the chief of police and actually be one of the persons that's being affected by the racism. It was very interesting.
So how difficult do you find it to convince people that police are not racially motivated?
Well, that is pretty hard to do. People have a perception, and it's unfortunate because, like I said earlier, 99% of law enforcement are really good people. We are not racist. We want to help people. We want to do things like that. It's just that 1% that's unfortunate. You've heard the old adage, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Well, that 1% is so loud and so boisterous, and unfortunately, it helps to sell newspaper and it gets clicks and likes on social media. That's what people are always looking for. So it's that 1%, just because they happen to be louder than the 99% that's doing the right thing, that it's almost glorified. So in order to do that, that's when I was in East Texas, I created a program that was called No Colors, No Labels Initiative. And it was a program designed to remove the preconceived notion that the police were racially motivated. And it really put the work and the effort on us as my organization to go out there and prove to those citizens, especially of that community, because they had been so used to being the minority group in that community was so used to being treated as second-rate citizens that it took a lot of effort. Unfortunately, while I was there, while No Colors, No Labels worked with the community, it was very positive. It was one of my biggest successes in life. It was also one of my largest failures. And we can go into that a little bit.
So why do you think it was, one of your biggest failures? Was there specific things that you just didn't get to achieve with it, or was it because the take-up wasn't as good as you thought?
No. So the funny thing is that so when I got there, when I was hired, I always make this little joke about it. I was hired because, they couldn't hire another Caucasian police chief. I mean, they just couldn't. The timing wasn't right. And they were never going to hire an African American. So they settled for this little caramel Mexican guy, to come in and bridge the gap. So I came in as an outsider from a very large agency. I was, in El Paso, we were a large agency. And then I went to this smaller community, 26,000 people. And it has an inherited, inbred racial division because of its history. The community was a community that was very deep-seated during the slavery times. They used to sell slaves on the center square. They used to discipline slaves on the center square. So racism has always been an issue there, and it's always been, temperamental issues between the Caucasians and the African Americans, right? So along comes this, Hispanic brown guy, and to fix this racial gap, and we created the No Colors, No Labels, and it was a grassroots program. And basically, I was out there by myself with I had 72 police officers with me, but unfortunately, only about 5 of them came along for the ride because they saw what we were doing. And I think the biggest issue, and the reason I call it my biggest failure, is because I think I failed to communicate what the mission of No Colors, No Labels was to those officers. We as people have this issue of listening. You always hear, we always hear this saying, "Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Do you hear me? Hey, bro, do you hear me?" Well, yeah, I hear you. I hear what you're saying, but am I actually listening? Mm-hmm. And I think those officers fail to listen to the mission of the No Colors, No Labels. The mission is to remove the preconceived notion that the community has that the police are racially motivated. What they heard, or what they chose to hear, was, he just called me a racist. Mm. You see what I'm saying? So I think that was my biggest failure, was that I wasn't able to communicate that directly to the officers. But then I also do think that the officers didn't want to change. I've often been told that I was the right guy at the wrong time because they weren't ready to change. But the community changed. The community accepted it. It was a very huge success. Crime rate was reduced by 20%. We went from 6 homicides to 1 homicide. We introduced procedural justice, and it was a great success. But the failure part was that I couldn't convince the majority of the officers to follow its lead.
That's really disappointing because, there's a few things that come out of that. Obviously being the right guy at the wrong time is a little bit disappointing, I think, because you were really on to a message that you wanted to, bring the community together. What would you say to yourself if you had to do it again? What would you say to those officers, and how would you approach the issue?
Well, it's funny because we've often played that in our heads. Me, my wife, my kids. We've often replayed that in our head and said, what would we have done different? And I mean, other than having to break it down and draw a picture, like if I was trying to draw a picture to a 2-year-old, there really wasn't much that we could have done, because for many years I blamed myself for that failure. I failed to do this. But everyone's, but look at all the great success you had. I mean, No Colors, No Labels, in 2017 got me the Martin Luther King Humanitarian of the Year award by the NAACP chapter, of that area, because of all the great things we did. But I couldn't change the officers. So I really do think that there was really nothing that we could have done with that group of officers. The only thing that I could have done different is to have gone in and actually removed the officers and hired new officers with a different mindset and a different train of thought. Because those officers, I mean, when I left, they just reverted back to doing the exact same thing that they've always done, and the community's back to where it was before I got there. So I had to stop beating myself up and just finally understanding that there was really nothing we could have done to change that.
And see, I think by you saying that out loud just shows that it's not actually a failure of what you did. You actually were really successful. And just to be able to reduce homicides from 6 to 1, that's 5 people's lives that are saved. Right. So do you think, though, that by you not still continuing on that program, or the officers taking that up now, that potentially lives could be lost because they aren't buying into that?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. That's the difference between, law enforcement here in the United States is that, here in the United States, we're always talking about community-based policing and 21st century policing, procedural justice. And that program had an aspect of every one of those theories or concepts. And when they stopped doing it, they basically just went back to doing policing just like we used to do it in the 20th century, which is not acceptable anymore. So I mean, I do think that not only did has it put the lives of the citizens in danger, but it's also put the officers' lives in danger, because you've seen the unfortunate adversity that exists between the community and the police now everywhere.
So just a sort of broad sweeping statement. I don't want to sort of get too political on racism, but do you think that there comes a time when people have to go, okay, now I'm just going to look forward? Things have happened in the past and I'm never going to be able to change that. And obviously we've come from a place of systemic racism. But do you think there needs to be a line drawn in the sand where people go, right, moving forward, we are going to view this differently and we're not going to feel as oppressed as potentially we do already?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. There, and I think we've already come to that threshold of saying, okay, look, enough is enough. And I think we had reached that point. Again, not to become political, I think we reached that point 4 years ago, and unfortunately, here we had some, a change in leadership at the national level that erased that line and said, no, 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 it's okay to be this way, and it kind of brought it back out again. And I think we took probably like 60 steps backward.
Wow.
I think we had really come a long way. We had done a lot of progression. Things were moving forward as far as racism and social inequality had come along. But I think that unfortunately, those last 4 years really did a tremendous amount of damage to the progress we had made during that time.
So what would your piece of advice be to law enforcement that are either currently serving or those people looking to get into law enforcement on what they can do to remove that sort of stigma around, the police racial bias?
And I think that right now, all the good police officers, because like I said, 99% of them are actually good people. They're out there trying and stuff like that. So I would actually, my request would be more to the community is to like, hey, look, give us a shot, give us a chance, give us the opportunity to show you that we're not all the bad things that everybody says we are, and allow us to take care of those that are the bad issue. Unfortunately, for the young officers that are out there that want to change and are looking for a change, a lot of the times their hands are tied because of the upper level, the upper hierarchy. This is the way they do things. This is the way they've always done things. And I've always said that we're not going to see a true change in the law enforcement world until my generation and the generation right before me. I mean, I'm sorry, right after me retires and completely leaves law enforcement, and we finally get in a new generation of leadership that has grown up with with these social issues and the social injustices, and are actually taking a step forward to change it. So I think we're still about unfortunately another 15 to 20 years behind the spectrum before it all changes. So if they can wait that long, come on, let's do it.
Now, I wanted to sort of move on to your, I suppose, qualifications. So you are, highly educated. You're currently completing a PhD in criminal justice leadership, and you hold a master's degree in the administration of justice and security, as well as a bachelor's degree in criminal justice administration. Now, you also graduated from the Department of Homeland Security's Leadership Academy and are a graduate of the prestigious Northwestern University Center for Public Safety School of Police Staff and Command, and other nationally acclaimed leadership schools such as the FBI Command College. So what's your motivation for study and I suppose just challenging yourself in general?
Well, my motivation, I've always said that, ignorance is what causes us to be in the boat that we're in right now. A lot of people will say, well, ignorance is bliss, and I'm against that. I do believe that a highly educated officer allows an officer to make better decisions out on the field, right? So I think that my motivation was just striving to get the knowledge so that I can come and implement it into the organizations that I lead to adapt to these things. And unfortunately, a lot of the times, because of budget constraints and things like that, it's really hard to change that culture and let everybody have the opportunity to attend these courses. So the motivation was really to come back with new information and new knowledge of how to do things in a new and different way. I've always been a progressive visionary person. And like I said, I've lost count of how many times people always tell me, you're the right guy at the wrong time. You're the right guy at the wrong time. That it's just like every time that I apply for a chief of police position somewhere and I don't get it, it's funny because I usually end up, I'm usually within the top 3 rankings. I'm usually somewhere in there in the final interview. I'll usually have the city manager call me and say, "We want to hire you, but you're just the wrong guy at the wrong time. You're the right guy at the wrong time. Like we need you, but nobody's ready for your train of thought."
Mm.
And it's like, gee, thanks. So sometimes I wonder if all that education went to waste because apparently nobody's ready to take it,
It sounds like there might be a little bit of, I suppose, intimidation and, fear of other people. Because in general, I suppose, in business, people are very wary of people that are highly educated, that have gone and they've done things and continue to push themselves. So do you think that might be translating into the law enforcement side of things, where people just aren't ready for someone that's as bright as you are?
Right. It is funny that you say that because on 2 different occasions, I had applied for a major city police department, and the recruiter, he's like, "Dude, you nailed it. This is yours. The job is yours, man. I mean, we're done. We're good. We're golden. You're the guy." 2 hours later, he's calling me back saying, "I need to talk to you." And he brings me into the room and he says, "The city manager said that there's no way in hell he's going to hire you because he doesn't want to be the dumbest guy in the room."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, just because just because I'm about to approach a PhD doesn't mean that I'm the smartest guy in the room either. It depends on which way you look at it. I mean, if you look at it this way, you could always say, "Wow, that guy's really dumb because he just spent about $60,000 on a piece of paper." I mean, it doesn't mean I'm the smartest guy in the room, but I do think that there is a sense of intimidation. I mean, you really don't need a PhD to lead a law enforcement organization or anything like that. To me, the reason I'm doing it is just it's more for credibility. It's more for a personal, growing up as a small child. My mom, she dropped out of school in the 8th grade. She was a factory worker all her life, worked minimum wage jobs all her life. I was never supposed to amount to anything in life. So it was more of a personal decision. It was more of something that I had to do just to prove to myself that I was capable of achieving the highest level. I mean, I've achieved the highest level in my career. That's being a chief of police. I've achieved the highest level of being, I will next year achieve that position of getting a PhD. So yeah.
Well, look, it's a shame that people do feel so intimidated, because I was going to ask you, how has your education contributed to your success? And it sounds like it's more a personal success that you've been able to experience with that education as opposed to a career success. But, obviously you've been chief of police, so that's nothing to sort of scoff at. So,
Right.
A lot of people would be looking up to that.
Yeah, I've done it twice, and I've been a state director. So, I think I've accomplished my mission. So I'm a good second part of my life. I'm just having fun doing what I want to do now.
That's amazing. So what do you think the most important thing that you've learned during your career so far has been?
I guess to be empathetic, to be more understanding of people. Not everybody is going to, I guess, to take my vision and kind of shorten it a little bit, because I'm a big picture guy. And so I understand the big vision, the long game. And a lot of people don't. And I guess the thing I would do is kind of more of a rein it back a little bit and try to do things more incrementally instead of at a faster pace, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, talking about fast pace, you do so much with your life. And in addition to everything that you do, you're also a lecturer and professor for the University of Texas at El Paso and East Central University in Oklahoma. And you previously served as an adjunct lecturer and professor at the historically all-Black Wiley College, the East Central Baptist University, and the International Business College of El Paso, Texas. So what do you teach? What topics are you lecturing on?
Yeah, they're usually criminal justice courses, introduction to criminal justice. Right now, I'm actually doing, which I don't know how I got stuck doing that. I'm doing a law enforcement statistical course, and the worst subject I hate is statistics, and I'm being forced to teach it. I'm not being forced, but I mean I'm teaching it, and it's like, oh my god, like why am I doing this to myself? So it's right now, like I said, it's introduction to statistical law enforcement, introduction to criminal justice, counterterrorism, and I'm doing a course next semester on private security, because I also I also own a private security firm as well. So yeah, so I'm teaching that.
You are a busy man, very, very busy.
Yeah, I don't know how I pull it off sometimes.
Look, I'm curious to get your perspective on Wiley College, which, as I said, is historically an all-black college. So do you think when a college serves one part of society only, whether that be black, white, male or female, that it does cause further divide? Or do you think it's necessary to have those sorts of institutions to let particular parts of society prosper?
Yeah, no, I think Wiley College at the time when it became a unit, when it became a college, here in the United States we have several what we call traditional black universities, right? And those are things, again, systematic, that have been in effect for many years. While it is a traditional all black college, it is open to anybody that wants to attend. It's just one of the functions that back when before the civil rights and all the good stuff that has been implemented. So I think they're kind of going away, but they're just traditions now. And I do think that it does require diversity. I mean, which is already there. It's open to anybody. I mean, of course, all female schools, all women's schools, I think they have a place in society as well. But like here in Texas, we have the Texas Women's College, and yet it's open to everybody, but it's the Texas Women's College. And I used to kind of like, you graduated from the Texas Women's College, but you're a man. And it wasn't until I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know it was open. I mean, I just assumed by the name. So yeah, so it's not necessarily that it's still in place. It's just that that's what they're traditionally known as.
So tell us about your experience being a lecturer. How different is it teaching the next generation?
Yeah, I love it. I really do. Having the opportunity to expand on your experience and share that knowledge with the future is very important to me, because now I have the opportunity to teach that generation how I envision law enforcement should be, based on the history and the mistakes that not only I've made, but people have made in the past. So those mistakes will not be repeated in the future. And, we get to talk, a lot about 21st century policing. So to me, I'm really excited and looking forward to that next generation of actually taking 21st century policing to that level that it should really be at, which is basically, if you really take a look at the 7 pillars of 21st century policing and procedural justice, is just basically what law enforcement was always intended to be. And that's servants of the community and the public that we serve, because that's what we are. We're public servants. And it seems that a lot of times we forget that that's what we do. Our power is inherited by the power that's given to us by the people that have given us the power to enforce the laws.
So how much hope do you have that the next generations are going to be able to, serve and protect, and I suppose bring law enforcement into the 21st century?
A lot. I really do think that this next generation that's coming in is really the right generation that's going to transcend law enforcement to where it should have been all along. I really do. I really do feel that way.
So are any of your, I don't know how many children you've got, I do know that you're a father, but are you pushing any of your children towards that career path?
No, no.
You say that with so much conviction.
No, look, it's the greatest career ever. It has given me everything that I have. It's given me, my house, my cars, the little money in the bank that I have. It's given me a great life. But I've also seen a lot of things and been part of a lot of things that I would never wish my worst enemies to see, and I don't want my children around that. I mean, it's a great profession. It's a noble profession. I mean, and unfortunately, and I say that just jokingly, because my oldest son, he is a law enforcement officer.
Wow.
I tried talking him out of it. My middle child is 15, and he's in a STEM high school. getting ready to. He wants to be a neurosurgeon, so I'm just counting on that. And then my daughter wants to be. I guess she's kind of going into criminal justice because she wants to be a defense attorney.
Wow. Okay, that's a broad spectrum, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's fantastic.
yeah. So
well done. Now, look, no wonder that your children are thriving and looking to, be a fantastic sort of next generation for this community. But your credentials keep going, Eddie. You also serve as a treasurer on the executive board of directors for the International Association of Directors of Law Enforcement Standards and Training, and on the executive board of directors for the Public Information Officer for Ranch on the Rock Drug Rehabilitation Center. So how do you find the time to do everything that you do?
So, just to clarify a little bit, December 20th, I actually retired from my career in law enforcement after 27 years. So right now I'm actually a private citizen. I am no longer the executive director for Oklahoma. And I no longer sit on the IADLES board because I had to give that position up because I was no longer in the field. So I am still the executive director for Ranch on the Rock Rehabilitation Center. And that's just something that, it was funny when I was approached and asked to be the executive director for that organization, because this is a drug rehabilitation center. So basically here's this law enforcement guy providing courses and classes and hope to ex-offenders who have been arrested, served, convicted, and are recovering drug addicts and alcoholics. And when I was first approached with it, I was like, are you guys insane? Like, I'm the guy who puts you guys away, not the other way around. So I got to spend some quality time with those individuals out there. And I mean quality time. I got to spend some time with them. And I realized that, life is about second chances, and I, for one, have been given a lot of second chances on things that I probably didn't deserve to have a second chance on. By any means, am I an angel or anything like that? And these individuals just happen to have gotten caught up on the wrong side of the tracks or on the wrong, whatever decision that took them their path. Again, traditionally and the statistics when I was growing up were against me. I should have been them. I should have been one of them. Single parent on the poor side of tracks, uneducated parent, no father figure, Hispanic minority, on food stamps, going to a underperforming school. I should have been one of them. And through the luck of, through the grace of God, I was able to overcome all that adversity. So I decided to go ahead and sit on the board, and you know what, we're doing great work. And, I'm a big believer in prison reform and criminal justice reform as well. So as far as finding the time, I have a very supportive family who gets involved in everything that I do, and they're always by my side. And I just thank them for that, because if they weren't, then I'd probably be divorced again. So,
So has being involved with the Rock Drug Rehabilitation Center, has that given you a new perspective on rehabilitation and people getting second chances, or did you always sort of believe that even when you were chief of police?
Well, I mean, I've always believed in second chances. One of the greatest honors, again, that was been bestowed on me is I had an individual when I was serving as the chief of police. He was a good guy. He came up to me one day and we just started talking, and he had been a two-time convicted felon, had done some horrendous things. He was out in the free world, and we were talking. And every time I saw him, I would shake his hand, go up there, buy him a cup of coffee. We talked. We would do this, and he gave a speech one day at his church about me, saying that I'm the only person who's never looked down on him for his mistakes, even though I probably should because of my position. He's a criminal. I'm the law enforcement guy, but I accepted him as one. So like I said, I'm nobody to judge anyone. And that's the one thing that really bothers me in life, is that because of my success and the positions that I have held or have not held, or the decisions that I've made, whether they're popular or unpopular, I'm often criticized and have a lot of critics. I mean, as they say, let the haters hate, right? I've had my name dragged through the mud. I mean, if you do a little bit of Google search on me, you'll find, certain stories about me that it's like, did you actually like read this? Because like, this is not even humanly possible. Like, but it's like, okay, and So I do believe in second chances, and I, like I said, for me, I've made mistakes too. So absolutely. And the time that I've spent with these individuals at the drug rehab center, the other thing that I've come to notice is that we have a system that's systematically, the whole system, whether it's criminal justice, the finance system, the wealth, every system in the United States is broken because it was structured and designed at a time that was it is not prevalent anymore. We've got to change things, and I think we just have gotten so accustomed to the way things are that we don't change them. So the drug rehab and rehabilitation center, these guys are great people and they need some help, but unfortunately they've got these blemishes on their records that no one else is ever going to give them a second chance unless we find a way to not necessarily expunge it, not necessarily remove it, but be actually able to give them a second chance in life to become productive citizens again.
So I'm just interested to get your take on it because, being a former police chief and serving with the police force for so long, in Australia, we don't really have very severe penalties for things. I think in America, some of your, criminals that get charged and convicted of drug crimes serve longer than, people that murder people in Australia. So what's your perspective coming from that law enforcement side of things on the actual sentences that these people get?
And that's funny because if we had this conversation 20 years ago, I would have said the opposite of what I'm about to say. I would have said, yeah, throw the book at them, lock them up. They're criminals. They belong behind bars. Unfortunately, all we have done is we have created an incubator to continue to funnel criminals because our criminal justice system, or as we call it, the correction system, doesn't correct a damn thing. All it does is it institutionalizes people and makes them worse people. So like you said, you have somebody who gets caught for, let's just say, a small amount of marijuana and they get sentenced. The next thing you know, they're serving 5 years for possession of a joint. And that's their biggest crime. But now you're putting them behind bars with rapists, murderers, burglars, thieves, con artists. And that's the education that they're getting. So what did you do? So now you just added another animal to the numbers. So now, within the last 15 years of my career, when I've actually stepped back as I grew up, as I started, educating myself, because, for the longest part, I think that our train of thought as we get older changes, as we become more educated or the more experiences that we have, we start to look at things with different lenses and opportunities, right? So definitely 20 years ago, I would have told you throw the book at them. Right now, I totally agree with you. We have some of the harshest penalties for some of the silliest crimes. And it's nice to see that we do have some prison reform that's changing that. Like marijuana is, whether you agree with it or not, it's becoming legal. The possession penalties are decreasing, yada, yada, yada. And I just think that, systematically, the decisions that were made were made to oppress the less social economic class of the United States. And I think it's not until we reach a political shift that we'll be able to, and I'm not saying either party in the United States is right or wrong. I'm just saying that a pendulum shift of both political parties to align themselves with a current mindset is what's going to cause us to move forward finally.
Absolutely. And I think, it's really sad that all the institutions are broken, but that's where they're at. And, we're not going to sort of solve this overnight, but you're doing a lot in the space to challenge the status quo and to teach other people how they need to lead. And I believe you've got a program, Leading Through Adversity. So can you tell us about the other things that you're doing since you left your position as chief of police? What are you doing now?
Yeah. So, in 2017, I opened up America's Best Strategic Security Group, which is a security firm that we provide security consulting for. So I've had that company since 2017 until now, and now I'm basically running that full time. And then I also in late 2018 I created the Leading Through Adversity Leadership Development Program, and I really do feel that And again, not picking political sides, but if you look at the last 4 years when we had an election, and you look at these last 4 years when we had a new election, and those were the best qualified individuals that we had, we have a definite decay in leadership, or what we perceive to be leadership. So leading through adversity, and please excuse me, what it does is it removes the bullshit from leadership. I'm going to tell you exactly what leadership is. Leadership, unfortunately, while there is a defined definition of what leadership is in Webster's dictionary or whoever's dictionary you look it up, that definition has kind of been lost among the masses because people now look at leadership through their perspective. You and I, we could say, let's list the top 10 greatest leaders, and we'll probably agree on 3 of them, because your perspective is going to be different from my perspective. And what leading through adversity does, it prepares the future leaders, the current leaders, and the burned out leaders that it's okay to have a out of box mindset, to have a visionary mindset, and to understand that everybody's not going to agree with you. And those are the things that they don't teach you in school. You go get your MBA, you go get a PhD. Nobody prepares you for the lonely nights. Nobody prepares you for all the adversity that comes with being a leader. Nobody tells you that, hey, you know what? Today, these people are going to be your best friend because of what you can do for them. But when you really need them and you can't do anything for them, they're no longer there. They were just there during the time that you could do something for them. It doesn't teach you any of that. So what leading through adversity does is it prepares you through all that. We do mentoring, coaching. We're a sounding board. We also prepare individuals who are moving up in the executive level. Like we'll do a mock interview for them, where we sit them down and we throw questions out at them and prepare them for them, because nobody prepares you when you're moving up that rank for that executive interview. You go in there thinking they're going to ask me all these questions, and that's not even what we're going to ask you, because we know you have the ability of doing the job. That's why you're here. What we really want to know are all these other questions, and you're sitting there going, why are you asking me that? I wasn't prepared to answer that. So, that's what leading through adversity does. It basically prepares, it unmasks leadership and shows you that, if you want to be a leader, you cannot be a friend to people. You either lead or you're friends. Leadership is about making the tough decisions while doing the right thing, because it's the right thing, regardless of whether it's popular or not. And it's not a popularity contest. You're not doing the job of being a leader to be liked. And if I'm a leader and you like me, then I must be failing somewhere down the system. You may respect me, but I don't expect you to like me. There's a big difference. And I think people get confused with that.
Absolutely. I liken it a bit to being a parent. You're there to teach your children right and wrong. You're not there to sort of be their best friend. So I think it's quite similar. I think it's amazing that you're actually creating the pipeline of new leaders, and, not to get political, but, obviously there is no pipeline in American politics for new leaders, just given, I suppose, the choice that you guys have. It's quite a shame that there's not, an upcoming group of people that are prepared to take over the reins. So what do you think as a broader community people can do to become better leaders and to produce better leaders?
I think that we got to get back to our basics. We got to go back. It's funny because here I am talking about vision in the future and moving forward, and then I'm saying we got to get back to our basics. What are our fundamentals? Our fundamentals are to provide life, liberty, and protection. That's what we're supposed to do. So we're supposed to serve our community. We're supposed to serve our constituents. And true leadership and political leaders have forgotten that, because it's all about enriching their pockets and what's best for my friends and what's best for everybody, instead of what's right for the common goal of the nation. And it's not until we change that mindset. And how are we going to change that mindset? I don't know, but I can definitely sit here and tell you that it's time, and I hate to do this. I hate to say this word because it's like cliche, but it's until everybody in all classes, and I'm going to even, and this is, I may get some slack for this. What I'm going to say is the minorities need to really wake up, but I also include Caucasians and as a minority group, because there is a minority group of that are not privileged with that white privilege. They're also suffering a social economic clash, and it's not to that group of people in all spectrums of all ethnic groups stand up and start defending themselves and I don't want to say fighting because I don't want to ever be accused of starting a Capitol riot, but until they start addressing their concerns and issues and stepping up to the plate and not fearing the political monster and themselves running for political office, that we're going to see a drastic change. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And look, I think you're doing, a fantastic job in trying to, bridge those sort of gaps. But I want to know what's next for Eddie. What have you got on the horizon?
Well, so we got a book, we got a book coming out July 4th, Unmasking Leadership. That book was in the works for like 6 years. And it's funny how quickly you can get things done when you're getting ready to retire. So it comes out July 4th. It'll be available on, my websites. If you order it through my websites, of course, I'll autograph it and ship it directly to you. And you can order it on Amazon and Bookstore and Barnes and Noble and all things like that. And then I guess what's next is we're finally going to start working on our animation series. The I Am El Jefe, and it's basically a story that's it's a animation series based on my time in that East Texas community that I was in that was very racial, and we're telling the story through a cartoon. It's actually kind of poking fun at it, and we've got about 8 episodes already created. We were getting ready to debut it at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, which is a big film festival here in 2020. Unfortunately, COVID killed that. So we're going to be back on the market here, trying to find hopefully somebody to distribute it, like Netflix or Hulu or somebody like that. But of course, we don't have any connections, so it's basically going around to all the film festivals, hoping that we just happen to run into the executive director or producer or somebody that's going to say, hey, that's going to be the next big thing. So yeah, that's what we're doing, and just keep moving forward, and hopefully I don't know, maybe jumping into the political circuit somewhere, maybe not.
Look, you're doing amazing things, and you're very big picture and you're very future focused. But I do have one last question for you today, and that is, what would you do differently if only you knew?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, there's one regret, and a lot of people that know me know about. I have one regret in life, and that was never serving in the armed forces. So I guess if I could go back and serve in the armed forces, and come back out and continue to do my life the way I did it, that's the one thing that I would want to do different, because like I said, I just think that the men and women who have served in the armed forces have paid the ultimate sacrifice. And I just feel like I kind of missed out on that.
Look, Eddie, I think you're exactly where you need to be, and you have been. I think you are definitely the right man in the right position right now. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. And I wish you all the best with your mission, and have no doubt with the amount of lives that you're changing. So if you'd like to know more about Eddie, I'll have links to his website and to his book as well and all his socials on my website, ifonlyknewpodcast.com.au. Thanks, Eddie.
Thank you for having me on your show. Thank you.
Thanks.